All right, we can't see you on the screen. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay. All right. Ready? Okay. I'm Norma Jimenez Hernandez. I'm from Estrella Mountain Community College. I think we're the only out-of-state institution that's presenting. We're part of the Maricopa Community College District in Arizona. And Laura Fry, who couldn't be here physically, but she's on the phone. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Fry. I'm from Estrella Mountain Community College, colleague of Norma's, and I work in the president's office. I report directly to the college president as his special executive assistant. So I do a lot of research projects and special projects for the college.
And I'm currently a psychology professor. I also have worked as, just recently left a post as honors faculty director and Phi Theta Kappa, which is a 2-year honors organization on community college, a chapter advisor. I've been there for 5 years. I come from a R1 institution, having left an R1 to engage in the community college because I think the issues that are there are really important and that we need to bring them to the forefront. So we're going to talk about a little bit about our college and then what we see as some of the issues. So Laura?
Sorry, I can't see the screen, so.
Oh, we're on 2, 3, and 4. Do you have 2, 3, and 4?
No.
No, okay, all right, so let me just go through it and then we'll have you, so you can address questions. So Estrella Mountain Community College is part of the Maricopa Community Colleges. The entire district is either first or the largest in the United States, depending on how it is that you count us. We are a Hispanic serving institution. 51% of our students are Latinos. We are part of 100, there it is, okay. We are located in the Phoenix area, okay, and it's the largest district within the state of Arizona. We're getting a lot of feedback from the wind, Laura. Oh, okay, there we go. We're the only school in Arizona who has been in the top 150 community colleges, according to the Aspen Prize. Does everyone here know what the Aspen Prize is? No? Okay, so the Aspen Prize, for those of you who don't know, was instituted several years ago. Every 2 years, the top prize comes with $1 million that goes to the top community college. Oftentimes how that's defined is by the metrics that we oftentimes see in terms of graduation rates, persistence rates, kind of along those lines. So we're in the top 150, just so you have a sense of who we are. And we're in the top 150, yet we have an 18% graduation rate, which is a bit disturbing to me. Where I come from, an institution where we have 90 and 95 at best, at state institutions, 70, 75% success rate. So going to an institution that has an 18% success rate is a bit disturbing to me. Okay, so recently we took 3 of our students to the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and they were the only community college students who presented there at the Alumni of Color Conference. And I want to play just a small little clip of this, just about 50 seconds of it. I can get it up here. Hopefully this works. Okay, so that's just because I only have so much time, so I have to, let me go back to the PowerPoint here. So we took these students to the School of Education, which we thought would be great. This is a great experience for our students. And we expended honors funds, because these were all honor students, as well as PTK students. That means they have at least a 3.5 GPA. Their PTK, that means that 92% of PTK students nationally graduate from a 4-year institution within 6 years that they enrolled at the community college, okay? And one of the things that we found is that it wasn't applauded. In fact, we encountered an enormous amount of resistance to taking students. We're still encountering an enormous amount of resistance to taking students. So this kind of led us to ask why that was. And when we were there, the students took a tour of Harvard College. And these stark differences emerged in terms of what we were offering our community college students and Harvard. Now granted, Harvard is at the extreme, okay? And other people say, well, that's unique. But to what extent do we believe that our students could achieve something along those lines? Or is that fundamentally part of the problem here? So at Harvard, the majority of the students are full-time students. Majority of our students, the most common type of community college student is a part-time student. At Harvard, they have 9 advisors per student. 9 people are watching out for you to make sure that you don't fall through the cracks. At our institution, we have 780 students per advisor. Now, how many should you have? About 300, 350 at the most. And I know this is an issue that's across the country in terms of the number of advisors for community college students. Harvard, they have a pathway of support with direction. What do you want to do? We're going to guide you through that. We're going to make sure that you do what you need to do in order to get there. Community college, we have a cafeteria-style choice of resources, whatever you want to do it. In fact, we have too many choices, people would argue. Majority of the faculty at Harvard are full-time faculty. The majority of our faculty are part-time faculty. In some of our divisions, over 90% of the faculty are part-time faculty. College-wide faculty advisors at Harvard, we have 5 faculty advisors at best who do college advising, and in fact that program was just axed, so we have no faculty advisors. And we have very few faculty who are willing to serve as advisors or in that capacity. They have a thriving campus life. We have a transient population. In fact, this is summer session. Library closes, I believe, at 6 or 9, and you can correct me, Laura, if I'm wrong, but the library is not open Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays during the summer. On Sundays during the school year, the library is not open. It's not worth our investment, not worth our time. 98% completion rate at Harvard, 18% completion rate at our school. We are out of the 10 community colleges, the best minority serving institution. So imagine what it looks like at the worst institution. And so what it got us to thinking about is this model that we have is how leadership is so important and how everything comes from that leadership model and how we have to rethink about what that means. So we have a governing board who currently just did away with the meet and confer process, which means that as faculty, I'm a faculty member there, that if they wanted to, they could pay us, they could, doesn't mean that they will, minimum wage, because they were about to throw out our contract, our policy manual that we have them. We have a chancellor who's trying to fight against that. We have college presidents who are accountable to them, vice presidents who are accountable to presidents, so forth and so on, and all the way down to the students. And so this model of who are our leaders and how do they matter becomes really important. And the question that Laura and I began to ask ourselves is, do we believe in community college students? Do we believe that they can be successful? We recently entered into this guided pathways model. We had some schools who started. We don't actually have enough data to show whether it works or not, even within our own district. And when you hear the presentations by those individuals who come, they say, look, we know 20% of the students are going to fail, regardless of what you do. When you start off with a model that 20% of your students are going to fail, you're already writing off 20% of the population plus more. I don't think that when you go to Harvard, they say, hey, 20% of the students are going to fail. Or when you come here, hey, 20% of the students are going to fail. And so having to rethink what that means and starting off already with the belief that not all students will succeed, how is that going to guide policy and in what direction is that going to go? So our current model, one of the things that we're arguing is who we hire matters, and it matters a lot. Leadership matters. As I've looked at our district and who our leaders are, I see a plethora of EDDs versus PhDs, and EDDs coming from for-profit online institutions. Now, why is that problematic? Well, they don't necessarily have the training in order to be leaders. There might be good managers, and some would argue poor managers, but not necessarily leaders. They don't have the vision. So if you're already starting off with a strategic plan that's flawed, or a mission and value system that's flawed, where can you go from there? We have leaders who don't have diversity of experiences. They were born and raised in the Maricopa system, is what we say. Born and raised, and the only experience that they've had is within Maricopa. That's extremely problematic because then you can't envision what other models might look like. And then you haven't had the theoretical background or training to help you engage with that. We have a lot of institutions who are, we have a lot of individuals that are careerists. They simply get the EDD, go through an online program at a for-profit school, and I'm talking places like Argosy, Capella. Are there some more, Laura, that you can think of? I might have lost Laura, okay, not quite sure. But the for-profit versus the non-profit institutions, that becomes really important because the quality of the training that our leaders come in with matters. We also then, what that leads to is this lack of data-driven policies. So we have policies that are instituted, and I'll give you some example of some, that don't really have any rhyme or reason in terms of moving us towards student success. So we recently had an out-of-state student travel ban. We went to NISOD. NISOD is a conference for career and technical colleges where professionals go and present. We had 3 students who were accepted to go with us. Right before we were going to leave, they banned student travel out of state. We weren't paying for the travel, the students were paying for it. And think about what that says to students and what that says to faculty who want to take students. We don't think your students are worthy enough to go. Our PTK students, again, these 92% of students who graduate, they were going to go to an honors institute. This is not a funding issue, people. This is we don't think students should travel, and there's a problem with that. We eliminated using multiple measures to place honor students, even though we had plenty of evidence to show that it worked, and we could get more students in honors, and the students did just as well or better than those who weren't placed there through multiple measures. We have a guided pathways investment, $23 million in a program that we're not even quite sure if it's going to work, even though we've had it at an institution for 3 years. We have no data to show that it's actually going to work. That's a huge investment to make in a state, and if you don't know Arizona, that has the greatest divestment in post-secondary education. So currently, our college receives $0 from the state. We receive nothing. So then to turn around and say, let's invest $23 million in something that we think it might work, but we're not quite sure, I find that problematic. And the last example, we're not requiring the FAFSA applications for students despite a prevalence of material hardship. And we've done that study on our campus. It's been done by the University of Wisconsin Hope Lab to show the prevalence of food and housing insecurity. Yet, let's not require the FAFSA, even for our honor students, when we have a policy that says, let's require the FAFSA. And so at the end of the day, I'm left with, why are we doing this? And I think we really have to reimagine the framework that we're using in terms of approaching community college students. Do we believe that they are worth our investment in terms of leaders, in terms of time, in terms of policies, so that they really are driven by research, they really are driven by data? I think that was really surprising for me to come from an R1 institution and having studied higher ed issues for over 20 years to a community college. And of course, I assume, of course we're going to make policies that are driven by data. Why would you not do this? This makes complete sense. And being an institution where we don't do that, where it seems to be more on a whim than anything else. And so one of the things that we call for is to reimagine the framework, because at the end of the day, the loss in terms of students, which means a loss in terms of the workforce that's prepared to meet the demands of the state, becomes very problematic. Besides the moral and ethical obligation that we have, if students are coming to us and 99% of them want to be successful, it's not like they come and sign up and say, well, I guess I may want to finish or not finish. So how are we creating these types of institutional supports so that all students can be successful? And why do we have policies in place, or why do we make decisions related to the strategic plans or to the mission or to the values that supposedly we adhere to, when we're not really heading in that direction? And so those are the questions that we're left asking. Laura, did you want to add anything?
Just a clarification that the divestment is for the entire community colleges in the Maricopa system. So no community colleges in Maricopa County receive any assistance from the state. It's not just our college.
Yes, so all 10. Actually, no, none, right? None of the community colleges, right?
None.
So
Yeah.
Arizona is very interesting in that regard, because we have this great divestment in terms of educational spending in higher ed. Arizona is interesting in and of itself. I'm from California, so there's a lot of things that are very interesting for lack of a better word. But I want to open it up for questions because I know we had run out in the other two presentations. So, and if there's questions for the other presenters, I'll also allow that during my time. Are there questions, comments? Wow.
I want to know, how are you guys capturing data related to initiatives? So either to student equity or to triple SE makes sense because you guys are gathering like student service data, or maybe even like basic skills initiatives, or if you guys have like strong workforce or adult education block grant. Is that being captured within your model?
That's being presented in the model. So what we do is, that's part of the assessment piece. When a participating unit or faculty member enters assessment into our system, they have to have data that they're looking at for assessing. So, for example, strong workforce data, or we're talking about student achievement data, persistence, success, completion, and so what we do is we actually, and we're quite proud of this, we deliver the data in the system. So with a lot of these, we call this process program review. And so a lot of folks, they have to look at the data like in a separate report, but we drop the data right into the input screen that they're looking at, and we ask the question there. So part of the recent legislation that we've been talking about is that colleges in the community college system must have what they call institution set standards. We have to set performance standards for all of our student achievement measures, or for a number of student achievement measures. There's 7 of them required by the federal government. So where we are required to evaluate that standard, we ask that question and say, did you meet the standard or not? And so then we can assure that monitoring occurs at that level, and because it's a roll-up model, we can go right to the specific area to find out who has or has not met the standard.
You had your hand up, somebody? Yes.
Sorry. No, it's okay. I'll think of it again. I didn't write it down because I wanted to listen to your questions.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Was the divestment in junior college in Maricopa, was that an initiative at the local level to take that money and move it somewhere else? Or?
Laura, do you want to tackle that? Was the divestment at the community college at the local level? I think it was at the state level, right? But I think you have a little more history.
State level. It was the state legislature divested in 2015 completely. It had, for the several years since 2008, had been reducing the budget over time. We lost approximately $52 million during about a seven-year period, and then they completely eradicated all support systems in 2015.
And sir, you had a question? Yes.
In terms of implementing guided pathways, what measures are you attempting to use? And as faculty, where's the faculty buy-in? Where are the faculty leaders to implement? Or does Arizona and California, for our community colleges, we have Senate, and we have quite a bit of oomph with some faculty if we choose to. What is that like in Arizona?
Did you hear the question, Laura?
Yeah, so it's a question about the pathways and how faculty are getting invested.
Yeah, is there buy-in from the faculty?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. They're trying to drum up that buy-in. So right now, they're trying to, the faculty are supposed to, through their IC councils, which is the instructional councils, work through developing pathways that will link with the state universities. So the faculty are supposed to decide which classes will link with the existing degrees offered at the state universities. Again, it's very, as you can imagine, a spectrum. You have some individuals that are very keen on the buy-in and some are not. What's interesting though is Maricopa's way to buy investment is through giving faculty additional monies to participate in this. So faculty want additional money, so they participate on the councils. They may not be invested in terms of emotionally or mentally, but they are financially.
We have very little.
It's a very interesting system.
We have very little participation because I've attended those sessions. So we have very little participation. When I'm talking little participation, 10 people show up from the 10 colleges. And not one from each college, just 10 people in general. Whoever shows up, and that's pretty much it. And it's kind of this very much complacent attitude. Well, it's going to happen, so there's nothing we can do about it. And oh well. And so there is a struggle right now. And one of the in terms of are faculty really invested in students or not. And that's why the governing board did away in part with the meet and confer process. Their criticism of the faculty is you don't really care about students. And when I'm a faculty member there, so when I don't see faculty showing up to these things, there's a part of me who wants to say, well, are we really as a group invested? And remember, we're a small proportion of the entire faculty because I don't know the proportions, but I think it's 70-30, Laura? 30% of the faculty are full-time residential faculty. Is that the correct proportion?
70% at Estrella are adjunct and 30% are residential. The balance is a little different at the other colleges.
So very few of the adjunct faculty come out for these meetings or anything along those lines?
There's no adjunct faculty that didn't participate. They were banned from the participation because they felt that adjuncts didn't understand what was going on, and therefore only residential can participate in the pathways.
One more question? One more, sir in the back.
Yes, I was going to say, if you think if they were to increase the faculty in terms of full time, would they get a better percentage of people being more vested? As you were saying, that there's only 2 faculty showing up, but could it be because they're only part-time?
I think it depends on who you hire. I think that's why hiring matters a lot. We have a hiring process where it's been like one I've never been through. It's a 50-minute process, and somehow in 50 minutes we know who we should invest in for the next 20 or 30 years, where you do 30 minutes worth of questions, 10 questions that are standard for every single person. There's a rubric. You meet the answers to the rubric. You get passed on, you do a 15 to 20 minute micro teach, and somehow I used to work at Claremont Graduate University. I went through kind of a day and a half worth of investing in them and them investing in me. And I've asked this question, do you think we can really know people in 50 minutes? And they're like, well, I don't really think it matters. And when that's the standard answer, I think we really have to look at the hiring process and kind of the entire model.
I would like to thank
Oh, she's dying to ask one more question.
Sorry. It's a combination of both. So, from the perspective of a student in community college, I had a question. I want to know, within your research, what you found about it not being about the staff, and it not being about the psychology of it, the importance of it, and it not being about academics. What have you found when you reach all these conclusions about administrating in terms of what I've heard of the students, they don't really care about what we're learning anymore. It's all about the numbers. What do you have to say about that?
I would say that the students would wholeheartedly agree with you. And I almost invited a student to present with us, but we have such a short amount of time, and that's exactly what she would say. What she would say, there are pockets of people who care, but as an institution, when you have these types of policies, they don't seem to care. At least they'll tell you, but their actions don't actually match up with that. So part of the work that Laura and I have been doing is talking to students and asking them, what has been your experience here? What do you think people are saying to you? And they'll say, people don't care about us. I don't care if the classroom only has 15 students. They don't care. You can be in a class with 150 students and have an institution that seems to care. You can be in a class with 8 students and have an institution that doesn't seem to care. So that's what their perceptions are, is the institution doesn't care.
Which brings us down to the social responsibility and ethics, which really just kind of drives down from what's going on up on top. So
Yes.
that also
Yes.
opens up a can of worms to
But if it's,
study on later on.
but if it's being measured, I mean, arguably, the college will need to do more to support like other areas of learning, like the academic things with it, that like social responsibility. Yeah.
But I think, what's interesting about learning about Arizona is how similar it sounds to California.
Yeah.
Every statement that you've made about the culture that you find yourself in, we can make over here. And I would simply suggest there's a theory about this, that there was a dissertation done on the City College of San Francisco and its failure, that it was the only second community college in the state for education. They called it normalized ignorance. And that there's a whole theory of that kind of organizational behavior. It's based on the Challenger accident, right? The things that lead to institutional failure. And so normalized deviance I found was an excellent description of what's happening.
So we're looking for good leaders. I have my card.